All right, let's talk about something we've probably all felt. You're putting in the hours at the gym, you're working your tail off, but the results just aren't showing up. Well, if that sounds familiar, you are in exactly the right place. We're about to stop guessing and start building muscle the smart way, using science.
Yeah, this right here, hitting a plateau. It has to be one of the most frustrating things in fitness, right? You're consistent, you're pushing yourself, but your progress just stops. It flatlines. You've officially hit the wall. But here's the thing. The answer isn't always to just train harder. Nope, it's about training smarter. And that's what we're going to break down. We're going to give you a scientific framework, a real blueprint, so you can understand the why behind your workouts and finally smash right through that wall.
Okay, so what's really going on when we talk about muscle growth? Why do some workout programs seem to work like magic while others just fall completely flat? Well, it all comes down to understanding the actual biological process we're trying to kickstart every single time we lift a weight.
And the big, fancy scientific term for this is muscle hypertrophy. It sounds complicated, but really, it's pretty simple. All it means is making your existing muscle cells bigger. See, you're not actually creating new muscle fibers, you're just making the ones you already have grow. That is the fundamental goal.
So, the million-dollar question is, how do we actually make this hypertrophy happen? How do we send that signal to our body that says, hey, it's time to grow? Well, the research is pretty clear. It really boils down to three primary triggers.
First up, you've got mechanical tension. This is just the raw force, the sheer load you're putting on the muscle when you lift heavy. Then there's muscle damage. You know that good kind of soreness you feel after a tough workout? That's it. You've created tiny micro tears that your body rushes to repair, building them back even stronger. And finally, metabolic stress. This is that burn or that pump you feel during a high-rep set. It's the buildup of byproducts in the muscle. If you can hit these three triggers, you're sending a powerful signal to grow.
Okay, so that's the science lesson. Tension, damage, stress. Got it. But what does that actually mean when you walk into the gym? How does this change the way you pick your exercises or structure your workout? To really see how this works, let's look at a fascinating study that pulls back the curtain on muscle activation. This is where the science gets super practical and honestly kind of mind-blowing.
So this study used a technique called electromyography, or EMG for short. Essentially, scientists put electrodes on the skin to measure the electrical activity in the muscles. It's like they can literally see which muscles are firing the hardest during an exercise. And for this, they hooked up some elite bodybuilders to find out what was really going on under the surface.
And the results were just incredible. Take a look. During a standard frontal raise, the activity is all concentrated in the front of the shoulder and the chest. Makes sense. But now look at the second movement. By simply turning the thumbs down in what's called internal rotation during a lateral raise, the activation completely shifts to the back of the shoulder. A tiny change in form leads to a massive change in which muscle is doing the work.
This chart just makes it crystal clear. Look at the bar on the left for the frontal raise. The rear deltoid is barely even awake. But look what happens on the right with that small tweak to the lateral raise. The activation just goes through the roof. We're talking about this same joint, maybe even the same dumbbell, but you're hitting a completely different part of the muscle. It's that specific. So, here's the big takeaway, the thing you really need to let sink in. Building a specific muscle isn't random. It is a direct result of the movement you choose and, maybe even more importantly, the precision of your form. You can consciously decide which muscle fibers you want to hit. It's all about training with intent.
Okay, so let's take this idea of training with intent and use it to build a super practical framework for training the back, which, let's be honest, is one of the most complex muscle groups in the body. To make back training simple, we can break it down into two main goals, width and thickness. When we talk about width, we mean that classic V-taper. That's all built by your lats, and the best way to target them is with vertical pulling motions. Then you have thickness, that dense, rugged muscle right down the middle of your back. That's built with horizontal pulls that really target your traps and rhomboids.
And here are the tools for each job. For width, you're thinking of any movement where you're pulling down from above. So pull-ups, chin-ups, lat pull-downs. For thickness, you're pulling from in front of you toward your body. These are your classic rowing movements like barbell rows or dumbbell rows. See? Simple when you break it down.
Now, just knowing the right exercises is only step one. The real magic, the key that unlocks all that growth, is mastering the execution. It's all about making sure the target muscle is actually the one doing the heavy lifting.
This right here is the #1 complaint when it comes to back training. You've been there, right? You do a hard set of rows, and the only thing on fire is your biceps. This happens because your arms are just hardwired to pull and take over. To really grow your back, you have to consciously override that instinct.
The solution is a simple mental cue that changes absolutely everything. Stop thinking about pulling with your hands. Instead, picture your hands as just simple hooks. The entire movement needs to be started and finished by driving your elbows.
Let's make this even more practical. For those vertical pulls like a lat pull down, literally imagine trying to tuck your elbows down into your back pockets. For horizontal movements like rows, the goal is to visualize trying to pinch a pencil between your shoulder blades at the top of the movement. These mental cues are what build that powerful mind-muscle connection.
So that's the core principle, right there. Real, sustained progress comes from training with intent. It's about understanding what a muscle is designed to do, and then choosing the perfect movement that directly challenges that function. It's the end of guesswork.
So now you have a framework that goes far beyond just your back. This principle of matching the movement to the muscle applies to absolutely everything. So I'll leave you with this to think about. On your next leg day, how will you use this approach to specifically target your quads versus your hamstrings? The power to train smarter, not just harder, is officially in your hands.